Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Day. On our Thursday edition of the Mac and Jack Sports Show, we're the show that covers all the local Northeast teams, professional sports, New York, Boston, and Philly. You can follow us live on Mac's Sports Facebook page. Just go to username MacMan62 and Facebook search, and it will bring it right to us. You can Google Mac and Jack Sports. Find us live on YouTube and Twitch, and also see our past shows. Follow us on Instagram at Mac and Jack Sports to see all your local Northeast professional teams news and updates. Like, follow, share, and where you can, subscribe to help keep us growing. I'm Mac with my co-host, legendary boxing sports writer and former president of the National Boxing Writers Association of America, Jack Hirsch, our sports historian gatekeeper. How you doing today, my New York friend?
Great, Mac. Why would anyone want to see our past shows? It's old news already. But we did have a great one yesterday. If you want to see great interviews about the New York football Giants with Lance Meadows and Bart Oates, we had a heck of a show yesterday. I'm still on a high about it, Mac. I feel like taking the day off and just unwinding. I feel like we won a championship with such a great show, and now we're back in it, playing immediately.
Yes, you, two different personalities. You had Lance Meadows, who was like all business about the Giants, incredible insight, incredible information, and then you had Bart Oates, who was a little bit more laid back and funny, but with a wealth of memories and knowledge on the Giants also. So it was a real good show. Today, Jack, we're scheduled to have boxing expert, the Iceman, John Scully, on the show at about 8:30. He's down in Florida. I've been in contact with him. He can't leave the hotel room because of COVID, and the reception, he said, is not that greatest, so he may or may not be with us. Hopefully he is. Just received a really nice award just recently. But we also have Brian Henny, a great guest that you set up, Major League Baseball anchor and analyst, a boxing analyst also in his own right. And you got him on the show today for us, and he'll be on at 9:30 on Eastern Time. So we have another great show lined up, Jack, and so we're going to get to the sports updates for you first. And even though there's not a lot of games going on and stuff like that, there is a lot of sports news out there. And speaking of the Giants, as you just did, Giants safety Logan Ryan credits the Giants trainer Maher for saving his wife's life. His wife, Ashley, who's pregnant, told Ryan she was having stomach pains and she was going to sleep these pains off. Ryan, he told Maher about it, and the trainer suggested she go to the hospital immediately, where they performed emergency surgery on her because of I'm going to try and say this right, Jack. It's ectopic pregnancy, where the baby is growing outside the uterus and can cause damage to the organs of the woman carrying the baby. So he credited the trainer. The trainer told her to get to the hospital right away. And, of course, Coach Judge said if you needed to go down to Florida, don't worry about the team. Go take care of your business.
Well, Logan Ryan was with Coach Joe Judge 3 years at New England when Joe Judge was a special teams coach and Logan Ryan played for New England. And one of the main reasons he came over to the Giants, because of Joe Judge. And he says Joe Judge treats the players like family and so on. And maybe that's one of the reasons the Giants play so hard. I know they have a dismal 1-6 record, but they're in every game and they're giving 100%, and that's a tribute to the direction that Joe Judge has them going into.
Yeah, Jack. They're this close almost every week now, and I think once they get that first win, hopefully it might be this Sunday. We'll see. Maybe it starts snowballing a little bit, and they put a couple wins together. Staying with the Giants real quick, Golden Tate and head coach Judge had a long heart-to-heart conversation about the on-field complaining about not getting thrown the ball. To make matters worse, his wife echoed Tate complaining on social media So Tate did not practice yesterday, Jack, but will be practicing today.
The wives have to know, don't get involved on social media. I know it's difficult. They feel their husband's getting the short end of the stick. When the Patriots lost to the Eagles in the Super Bowl, Tom Brady's wife complained about dropped balls and this and that. And what they're basically doing when they speak up, they're just antagonizing the coaches, the other players on the team. Nothing good comes of it. I mean, Baker Mayfield's wife was kind of getting into it with the fans because they booed her husband, so she's kind of going after them. That's not going to make things better. That's not going to quiet things down. So they have to know, I mean, support your husband and so on. And if you want to speak quietly behind the scenes, that's fine. But once you start going public like that, you have to think, are you really going to gain anything by doing that? And the answer in just about every case is no.
Yeah, I agree, Jack, because, I mean, the fans that support the team, the ownership really is involved in getting, the good publicity out there. They want the fans to come. They want them to come to the stadium when it's allowed again. They want them to buy the apparel. They want, good relations with the fans the best they can. And when a wife starts going on social media and starts, trashing the fans, there's a problem.
Mac, remember with the Mets, Chris Benson, their pitcher, they had a good pitcher. His wife, Anna Benson, very controversial, would always speak up, talk. And she's put down Carlos Delgado, who was the Met first baseman at the time.
Right.
Said something really negative about him. And it wound up getting Chris Benson traded. Now, the Mets didn't say that was the reason why they traded him, but you can't have that going on. You just can't.
Yeah, recently, Jack, there was a sign. I'm trying to remember the name. I can't think of it off of my head. I did cover it before, where the soccer player actually got fired because of the social upheaval, and the wife was posting derogatory comments about the protesters, and he ended up getting cut from that professional soccer team. I don't know if you remember that. I can't remember the name right now off the top of my head. But
Mac, my wife might be going on social media saying you don't give me a chance to speak. I'm criticizing you. What's that going to do to our relationship?
I think that would be a fib, Jack. So anyway, the former Jets GM said the Giants should draft quarterback Justin Fields from Ohio State and move on from Danny Dimes. How do you like that, Jack? The former GM of the Jets speaking about what the Giants should do right now.
Well, I'm going to say this. We don't know who really, come time of the draft, is going to be more in demand. Who would be a better fit? Would it be Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence? All along, everyone's saying Trevor Lawrence. But there are other quarterbacks out there. Sometimes you get 3 or 4 that are so even in your own eyes that you feel you can trade down and still get basically the guy you want. Like you just want one of them. So we don't know until the draft actually is coming around and they work out for the teams what the quarterback stock is going to be. Everyone's assuming it's clearly going to be Trevor Lawrence, but Justin Fields, he's making a run for the Heisman and so on. Yeah, we just don't know. Really until the time comes. But we move towards that direction little by little. And it's like we follow the patterns. And Trevor Lawrence, who was the clear-cut number 1, he still would go number 1, but he's not a lock to go number 1 in the draft anymore. Not a complete lock.
What do you think about a former GM coming out and speaking on a current team situation, especially when it's not your former team? I mean, I don't know why this was even publicized from a former Jet GM.
Because he's an analyst for ESPN.
Okay,
it's his
all right.
Job. Yeah, it's his job to, speak out, give opinions. It doesn't mean anything for GM or whoever. I mean, listen, Keyshawn Johnson is making certain statements and so on, saying this guy should be traded for that guy. And what gets me, and this has to be a discussion for another time, some of these former players who were not really team guys, they're getting these plum analyst positions. They're getting rewarded in their behavior. They were eye guys, like Keyshawn Johnson, outstanding receiver, but he was an eye guy. If the ball was thrown to Wayne Corbett, who was an outstanding receiver, to his teammate, he would whine and complain and put his teammate down. Randy Moss, one of the greatest receivers of all time, but he was kind of like an eye guy.
Sure.
I mean, listen, you mentioned before in the beginning of the show, Mac, Golden Tate, his wife, getting involved because he's not getting the ball thrown to him enough, which speaks with the prima donna, receivers that we have. And you really want guys like that on a young team who are going to demand the ball. And not all veterans are like that. You get certain individuals like a Larry Fitzgerald would never complain. Ultimate team guys. It's the team first.
I definitely agree with that, Jack. The 49ers, if they didn't have enough problems already with all their injuries, the tight end, the quarterback, they had a player that tested positive for COVID. But the game, Jack, they said still will be going on tonight, barring something crazy. So I don't know what team, we've talked about the Patriots and people opting out. We've talked about injuries. But, man, them 49ers have had a heck of a season with their injuries this year, Jack. And now this.
49ers are erratic. You don't know what to make of them. If they go to the playoffs, they could go to the Super Bowl. They're that good. I mean, we just don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of players, like you said, have been injured. Now there's missed practices with COVID. But we were talking about that the other day. We can make all the excuses we want about injuries and COVID messing up the season. But at the end, notice the elite teams, for the most part, are still there.
Yeah.
The weaker teams aren't. So the season, to a large degree, is playing out the way we thought it would. I don't think there are any really major surprises. And don't tell me the Dolphins, because the Dolphins were trending in the right direction. And New England, don't tell me that's a surprise, because they were trending a little bit downward. So,
well, I think, yeah, to go along with your point there, which is true, I think it a lot has to do with the experienced teams that have played together for a few years, even more than the elite. I mean, the experienced teams are pretty much the elite teams because they keep their players, they keep their coaches, and these are the organizations that are strong. And it's something to be said about having your coach stay on and keeping your players in house and keeping them on your team, because continuity, Jack, in sports is just as important to me as talent can be when it's not managed correctly. So back to
leadership is vital, Matt. No doubt about it. But it's not always the answer. Some people are coaches who you think would be natural leaders. It doesn't work out that way. We were talking about the 49ers. Now, before Jim Harbaugh went there and he turned the team around, Mike Singletary was their coach. Yeah. He was an awful coach for the 49ers. Awful. Right. And I don't know why they didn't win and it just all went bad. But with the Chicago Bears as a player, he was the ultimate leader. Which commanded Mike Singletary. He commanded tremendous respect when he was with the Bears. But then when he became...
Yeah, which goes to a point of mine, Jack, that we made during past shows. A lot of time these stars, the elite players, have a problem coaching because things that come to them naturally, a lot of players don't have. They have to work hard at it. And that's why in a lot of cases, the coaches like the Parcells and the Belichicks and some of the great coaches, even Sean Payton, who was a decent player, they had to work really hard. They had to be very studious to get their positions and to stay on a team or to make a team. And I think it makes them a little bit more understanding of what it takes, the kind of, the drive, the determination, and knowledge it takes to become a great player. And they can take them talented guys and kind of even mold them even more into all around great players. So speaking of the positive for COVID, Matt Stafford tested positive. They said he still has a chance to play on Sunday. That's what all the Lions would. That's all they would need right now. I think they're at 3-4, Jack. And
I'm confused, Mac. Everyone's
right,
told to quarantine for 2 weeks if they
right.
test positive and then they're back. It's like athletically, there's like two standards.
Good
Same
rules.
thing I could never figure out in the sport of boxing. Someone would get knocked out, it would be an automatic 90-day suspension. But if you get knocked out playing football, you can be back playing the next week.
Right,
So,
right. I mean, there's different. How that goes, Jack. You know how the.
economics. That's
Oh my God, yes. The Browns GM had a conversation, sort of with the media. He kind of conversed on Baker Mayfield's last year option. He said that he felt good about the way Baker was playing. I guess he has to say that, but he definitely avoided the contract situation of the option of the team. I think, Jack, if Baker don't start getting his act together there, because against the bad teams, they play well. Against the good teams, when it falls back on Baker, he's not doing so well.
okay, Matt. I'm going to ask you to play GM.
Right.
You're the GM of the Giants. Your phone rings. It's Cleveland. They want to swap even up Baker Mayfield for Daniel Jones. You make the deal.
Not even close. Not even close, Jack.
Not even close.
Not even close.
Even a thought?
And I'm going to tell you why. First of all, in the position I'm in, I could probably draft a pretty good quarterback if I finish off the way the Giants might finish off. And second, Baker is Daniel Jones 2 years later, or a year to 2 years later, and he's still throwing it.
1 year before. 1 year
and he's
more.
still throwing interceptions, and he still has problems making decisions. I'd rather go with Danny Dimes, who had a exciting rookie year, broke some records, showed a lot of promise, might have took a step back this year. In fact, he has. Different system, different offensive coach, different head coach, and he's got to learn how to play quarterback, and he will learn that. I think we had Lance Meadow on there talking about his quarterback coach, the former Patriots quarterback coach. And with the new offensive coordinator, Garrett should be able to mold him. We'll see what happens. I'm willing to give Dan one more year after this. After next year, if he doesn't show improvement, I would definitely.
Speaking of quarterbacks, what is going on with Washington with Dwayne Haskins? For sure, he was supposed to be gone before the trading deadline, and they didn't trade him. I can understand you just don't want to give him away. He was a first-round draft choice a couple of years ago. And if you're not going to get any type of value back in return, they're holding on to him. But it's an ugly situation there. I mean, I don't know whether you've ever been on a job where you absolutely despised going into work, despised it. And it's brutal. As little as 1 day on a job you hate seems like an eternity. And Dwayne Haskins is still part of the Redskins, and apparently he's going to be with them till the end of the year. But whatever they could hope to get in the offseason for him, they're not going to get any more than they would have gotten before the trading deadline unless they start playing him again and he can improve his value. And they're not going to play him again because he dropped down to third-string quarterback behind Kyle Allen and Alex Smith.
Yeah, I mean, there's personal feelings there. The owner really liked Haskins. The head coach got fired. The last head coach got fired because of Haskins not playing the way he thought he should. As I told the story before, and I know a lot of people out there remember this, when the owner actually called Haskins down when he got hurt during a Giants game and told him he was not going back on the field before he talked to the coach about it. And Haskins went over to the head coach and told him, hey, listen, I'm out of the game. And he looked at him like, what do you mean? And he said, well, the big guy called from downstairs personally and told me I was out of the game. So,
I'd like to know, who did Daniel Snyder call? Because Dwayne Haskins, I'm sure he didn't have a cell phone in his pocket while he was playing the game.
No, he called the sideline. He called the sideline phone.
Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, that's pretty outrageous. I mean, talk about the ultimate meddling. But
Yes.
I can understand what Daniel Snyder was doing. I disagree, of course. But RG3 had a outstanding rookie year. He was rookie of the year. He beat
Right.
out Andrew Luck. People
Right.
forget how outstanding RG3 was for the Washington Redskins in his rookie year. But they played him when he was hurt.
Right.
The injury got a lot worse. He was never the same again. And that bothered Daniel Snyder. So when he was looking at Dwayne Haskins, he was getting flashbacks of RG3. So
Well,
I can understand what Daniel Snyder was coming from, but you can't make that call
No,
as a no.
no,
I mean, it was totally out of line. But I can understand his meddling, even though I disagree with it, of course.
yeah, maybe if he meddled a little less with the cheerleaders over there, things would be okay over there,
Oh,
right?
that's a cheap shot, man.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
There, come on.
McCaffrey will play this Sunday. He's been practicing. He'll finally make an appearance here in Week 9. Should help the Panthers out. I think the kid that replaced him, Davis, has been doing an outstanding job. Of course, he's no Christian McCaffrey, but so McCaffrey.
This thing with the Panthers, they're not that good. They're not going to be that good next year.
I don't know, Jack.
7-9, 6-10, 7-9 team this year. Maybe
Listen,
they go up to 8-8 next year. They're not one of these elite teams. They're not a local team.
They rebuilt.
The Panthers. I mean, I can understand a New York link. You like Teddy Bridgewater, who was with the Jets like a year here, and Robbie Anderson, who should still be with the Jets, but that's another story.
I appreciate, Jack, any new coach going in there and turning a program and drafting, bringing in a new philosophy and putting out there a team that's 3-4 right now. That's not bad, Jack.
3-4 is not good, Mac.
Well, it's sure not.
They won a doormat team to begin the year. They're not surprising anyone. They're 3-4.
The Jets.
The Jets. This isn't a new coach taking over the Jets, and the Jets being 3-4 and us smiling at the end of the right direction. Look, I'm willing to give a guy slack. Joe Judge is 1-7.
Right.
They're moving in the right direction. I'm happy with him as a coach. I'm happy with how hard the Giants are playing. I can see good things happening to the Giants over the last 8 games. Over the last 8 games, I'm going to predict the Giants win at least 3 of them. How's that?
Wow.
They'll go at least 3-5.
Okay.
3-5, 4-4. I wouldn't be shocked if the Giants go 5-3 over the last 8 games. I wouldn't be shocked.
Okay.
But I think they are going to win 3-4 games out of the last 8 because they're moving in the right direction.
Well,
okay, but the Carolina Panthers here. I mean, why are we stuck on a Mac? I mean,
we're not.
I think you're looking to retire and move to North Carolina.
How'd you know?
Your word. So
there you go.
A new team to root for, in the local area. So your eyes on them.
So, Jack, Trevor Lawrence will not play versus Notre Dame. That's a pretty big thing. The kid looked good. The kid that replaced him looked really good, though. I mean, he threw for – he's big, he's fast, he's got a good arm. He played off the hook last game against Boston College, but Boston College is not Notre Dame, Jack.
Well, let me tell you, they struggled to beat Boston College, and had Trevor Lawrence been in there, they wouldn't have had to sweat it out the way they did. But
Very
like
true.
I said, it's a big game against Notre Dame, playoff implications and everything. They don't consider the time or that Trevor Lawrence has to miss a game. It's a bottom line business, wins and losses.
Definitely. We have in Major League Baseball, Jack, we have the top ranked Major League Baseball free agents, and this is the top 5 that I got. Was outfielder George Springer, of course, from the Astros. He's a local guy from Connecticut. Trevor Bauer, pitcher from the Reds. JT Realmuto, the catcher from the Phillies. DJ LeMahieu from the Yanks. And Marcus Semien, shortstop from the A's, Jack. How do you feel about that top 5? Does that sound right to you?
Let me tell you, 2 have been linked to the Mets. Realmuto and Springer. I mean, Springer's like 33 years old. Has been an outstanding player with the Astros.
Yes.
Realmuto, they let the Mets have Wilson Ramos go, so they have a needed catcher. Steve Cohn has a lot of depth. I know he's the richest owner in sports, but he has a lot of debt to clean up. I'm not so sure he's going to throw this crazy money at free agents in the beginning for the first year. Remains to be seen. But then again, if he's the type of Mets fan growing up that they say he is, he would. With the Yankees, it's the other two players. Trevor Bauer, wow, they could use him.
Oh, definitely.
That's the big arm in their rotation. And DJ LeMayo, who plays different positions.
Right.
That's the thing about him. I mean, he could play first, second, third base.
Even shortstop.
And what a hitter he is, too. You can't play the shift on him because he could hit to all fields. And how much money these teams have, the business of baseball is out of whack because you don't have fans attending the games. There's that lost income. So what you would normally offer a player, what the standard going rate is, we don't know what it exactly is now. Mookie Betts took a little less from the Dodgers than he would have taken under normal circumstances.
Yeah.
And Mookie Betts was going to become a free agent, at the end of the year. But he elected to take the contract that the Dodgers were giving him.
Well, Jack, they got the big agreement coming up that they've got to negotiate here in a year or so. I would not be surprised if the owners held fast for a change and put a salary cap on baseball. I mean, if I was the owner,
do that, Mac.
Well, they can negotiate that. In the new agreement, they can, Jack. What I'm saying, when they negotiate that new agreement, I would not be surprised that they will, they put forth a salary cap. And I would not be surprised if the players do not agree to some kind of salary cap, that there will be a work stoppage. I think this year and next year, with all that lost income, and they can't trust each other by holding salaries down, especially with the Yankees, the Dodgers, Cohen now coming in. There's going to be a lot of money flowing around there, and a lot of teams in smaller markets are going to be hurting to get these free agents and to build some really competitive teams. So I think there's going to be a salary cap issue brought up. I think the owners are going to go ahead and say they want a salary cap. I think the players are going to disagree with it, and you may see a strike coming up very soon.
Mac, they actually do have a salary cap now. It has another name. It's called the luxury tax.
Yeah,
when teams go over a certain amount, they're hit with a very steep penalty. Very steep penalty.
It don't work.
It might not work for a guy like Steve Cohen if he says, "The heck with it. I have a fortune of money. I want to win. I'm willing to lose money as owning the Mets." Okay? But for the majority of owners, they don't want to go over that luxury tax. I mean, the Yankees have. It bothers Hal Steinbrenner an awful lot. He's trying to keep within the luxury tax. But once in a while, if you can get a certain player that's really going to, you feel, push you over the top and be the difference between a championship and not, you pay the price, no pun intended.
Yeah.
But the luxury tax has kept the owners in line for the most part.
Well, Jack, I mean, it's the luxury tax does not, all that does is it puts an extra money taken away from your profit. It doesn't stop teams from doing what. If I get a team and I get a few free agents that are going to put me over the luxury tax, but yet I go to the playoffs, yet I go to the World Series, I'm going to make that a plus. I don't think it's a good deterrent. I think they have to put some kind of. I think baseball is the only sport that doesn't have some kind of salary cap. So I think that this really has to be resolved, especially with COVID, Jack. Because if it doesn't, they're just not going to have some organizations are just going to run out of money. It's just going to happen. So anyway, the power rankings in the NFL have come out for this week, Jack. And let's see if you agree with them. At number 1, they have the Steelers. At number 2, the Chiefs. At number 3, the Seahawks. At number 4, the Bucks. And at number 5, the Ravens.
I don't go for power rankings because they change week to week, depending. It's like what have you done for me lately? When you say number one, the Steelers, number two, the Chiefs, you know the Chiefs are going to be there at the end. I'm not saying they're necessarily going to go to the Super Bowl, even though they're my pick to win it all.
Yeah.
But you know the Chiefs aren't going to fall off the cliff. I mean, you just know it. They're going to the playoffs. They're going to be a force. Whether anyone could knock them off there remains to be seen. But the Steelers could go the way of the Tennessee Titans. You didn't mention the Tennessee Titans. They lose 2 games in a row, and all of a sudden in the power rankings, people aren't talking about Tennessee when they talk about who might represent the AFC in the Super Bowl.
Right.
Tennessee's name isn't mentioned. The Ravens, they've lost 2 games. I mean, I'm surprised they're still hanging on to number 5 in the power rankings there. But it's like a what have you done for me lately? Like the Steelers are the glamour team in football right now because they're the only unbeaten team. You know, there's Ben Roethlisberger. They have a resurgence. They have one of the best coaches in the NFL in Mike Tomlin. But let the Steelers lose a couple of games, and what do the power rankings mean? I mean,
definitely. I still think the Chiefs right now are the best team in football until playoffs come along and somebody actually beats them. I don't know if they're as good as they were at the end of last year, but it takes to the end of the year before teams hit their stride. I don't know if Tampa Bay is as great as everybody thinks they are. I mean, to me, the Bucs, the Giants have shown that they're very beatable. And even when Antonio Brown come in, Jack, I mean, there's only so many people that the ball can go to. I mean, you can only throw to one receiver at a time. You only can hand off to one running back at a time. So, I mean, while you keep getting these weapons, there a lot of the times they're misfires because, I mean, Antonio Brown is not going to go out there and catch every ball. So, I mean, I understand that it gives them another option, but I don't think it's as big as deals people are making it out to be, Jack.
Well, you have a number of good teams in the NFC. You know, Tampa was 7-9 last year, 7-9. Hypothetically, had they not gotten Tom Brady and they kept Jameis Winston, who was an interception machine. I mean, if you want to complain about Daniel Jones, see what Jameis Winston did. I went to their game in week 15 last year. I was in Tampa. Right. I saw the Houston Texans play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I'm going to the game with my friends, and I'm praising Jameis Winston, okay? Saying, no, they should stick with him. Well, he kind of validated my belief with a pick 6 on his first pass. And then a pick 6 to end the game. And I'm like, you know? And what drives me crazy about the quarterbacks with the interceptions and with Daniel Jones and so on, Mac, they could throw a pick 6 to start the game, okay? Or throw an interception that's responsible for the other team getting a touchdown. Then they drive their team down the field in the next possession, and they complete 9 out of 10 passes and to tie the game up 7-7. And people are saying how good the quarterback is playing. He's not playing good. There have been 2 possessions, and it's a wash.
Right.
You give up 7, you gain 7. That's like, to me, 2 3-and-outs, basically.
Yeah.
And Tampa, had they got Jameis Winston, what would they be this year? Would they be 6-2? Chances are they'd be 5-3. Okay. Brady obviously is an upgrade. He's brought a lot of new energy to the team and a lot of new players.
And experience, Jack. And experience. I mean, look, Jack, I think that, what happens with a lot of interceptions and I've seen a lot of articles written about, getting rid of Jones and whatnot because of the mistakes he made. I wouldn't say all of them, a lot of great quarterbacks, when they start playing, and I'm not saying Daniel Jones is going to be great by any means. We don't know that yet. But, you go to Peyton Manning, you go to Brett Favre, you go to all these quarterbacks that became Super Bowl champions that are in the history books, had a problem with interceptions, Jack, especially in the beginning of their career. And if, the people out there that are saying, well, I would get rid of Daniel Jones. Well, I'm glad they didn't coach Peyton Manning, and I'm glad they didn't coach Brett Favre, and even John Elway to the point, and Terry Bradshaw in the beginning of his career too. All these guys had problems with interceptions early in their career, and it's just they come in and they think that they can, make that play that wins the game, and not to give up. And this is no, man. You got to learn to throw the ball away. You got to learn to take a sack. This is something that I feel a competitive quarterback who has the potential of being great because of that attitude has got to learn to temper himself. And I think that's the biggest problem Daniel Jones has right now. And by the end of the year, and I'll even give him next year, if he doesn't solve it, if he still believes that he can make every play and every throw, and he's going to try and change the game on one play, then I say you get rid of Daniel Jones. But
one of the reasons, Mac, you made a good point before when I asked you, would you trade Daniel Jones for Baker Mayfield? You wouldn't want Baker Mayfield here. And one of the best reasons for not wanting Baker Mayfield here is the criticism he'd have to take from the New York market. Daniel Jones is at least handling that well.
Yeah.
He's outwardly, at least. He's not complaining this. Baker Mayfield, if he's having a difficult time with the Cleveland media, imagine what it would be in New York. And same thing you said about Peyton Manning. You mentioned his name a little while ago. Peyton Manning had a playoff game here when he was with Indianapolis, and they lost to the Jets badly. I think it was something like 41-0. And the Indianapolis kicker, Mike Vanderjagt, said that Peyton Manning has to have a little more of a fire lit under him or something to that effect. Peyton Manning was furious. He called the kick an idiot on TV and so on. Mike Dungy was mad at the kicker. So, a lot has to do with temperament that these guys have, being able to shake it off and just move forward. And that's what made Eli Manning a perfect fit to be a New York quarterback. Perfect.
Yeah.
Any criticism coming Eli's way, he easily deflected.
Sure. And in fact, took the blame when a lot of times it wasn't his fault. He always, he's the one that said it fell on his shoulders. So it doesn't look like the Iceman is going to make it in. As I told you early in the show, Iceman John Scully is down in Florida right now. He's melting
in Florida, the Iceman, with the warm weather.
He's doing the quarantine thing. He's in a hotel room with bad reception. I talked to him a little bit yesterday, but as we know.
Wait, Mac. Wait. He's getting bad reception, but you're getting into a long conversation with him. Isn't that reception?
The phone and the Iceman is old school, Jack. I mean, he's younger than me. His technology is worse than mine and yours, believe it or not. I mean, his phone is fine, but you know how much when he comes on with his video appearances, we've got to kind of keep him centered because he's all over the place. So
Mac, this reminds me of when I tried to interview Nino Benvenuti. Benvenuti from Italy was a great Italian world middleweight champion. He beat Emil Griffith for the title. He fought Emil Griffith here in New York 3 times with the middleweight title on the line in the late 1960s, won 2 of the 3. So I see Nino Benvenuti at a Boxing Hall of Fame weekend in Canastota, New York, and I'm trying to interview him. How often do you come across Nino Benvenuti? Nino Benvenuti doesn't want to talk to me. It becomes apparent, and that's his right, and I respect that. But he just kept, instead of telling me I just don't want to talk, please respect my wishes, I would have walked away. Instead, he kept trying to tell me, speak like he didn't speak any English. But I was persistent. I really wanted to get that interview. Finally, the man who kept telling me, speak no English, told me off in perfect English. Okay, so
that's good. So Jack, without John coming in, you're one of the biggest boxing experts in the country. First, I'd like to congratulate Iceman John Scully. He got an award, the Burt Sugar Award, here in Connecticut. For his contributions to boxing, and there was a lot of contributions he's made over his career, from fighting Golden Gloves to pro to analyst to writer. He writes for boxing now and then, and and from even training some of the world champion boxers out there, he's had under him as a trainer. So he received the award, the Burt Sugar Award here, and he's got a banquet coming up. I think it's the Charter Oak banquet shortly. And congratulations, Iceman.
A word about Burt Sugar. I'm glad there's an award named after him. Not everyone liked Burt, I'll admit. Not everyone liked him. He could be a little bit of a handful, but Burt Sugar was the equivalent of, let's say, Howard Cosell, a happier version of Howard Cosell. Burt Sugar was flamboyant. He'd wear his checkered pants that were really out of style. He'd have his big cigar he'd be puffing on. He'd do things in an over-exaggerated, flamboyant way, but behind the scenes, I actually found him to be humble. Now, how big Burt Sugar was, Mac, I saw him at a boxing show in Atlantic City backstage, and the doors were kind of out of whack, and he wasn't sure how to get back to ringside, and he bumped into me, and I knew. So we walked through a little tunnel down a corridor, just me and him. It was quiet. We were talking. As soon as we hit ringside, I'm looking at all these people in the crowd yelling, Burt, Burt, Burt. And my head is like snapping. It was like I was with like a real star.
Right.
Burt Sugar was, he was a character, one of a kind. And, he's missed around ringside and missed around being in these talk shows as well.
Well, before I get to the questions and the topics I wanted to talk to the Iceman about, we got a couple things we're going to do, Jack. And this is one of your favorite times of the show where I get to ask you a question to test your knowledge in sports. And
I've been hating this lately, Mac.
So, Jack,
I'm only slightly better than the Jets.
So I'm going to make it easy on you this week because I've been stumping you a lot lately, Jack. So I'm going to get a little more modern trivia question to you, and it's only going back a few years. So can you name who the 2016 NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year was, Jack?
Offensive Rookie of the Year 2016.
Correct.
Oh, man, I don't know why. When 2020, you missed me. Oh, I was going to say Saquon Barkley. He's 2018. 2016. Not Ezekiel Elliott.
No, Jack.
Ezekiel Elliott came a year late, I think. Wow. Is it Ezekiel Elliott?
It's wrong, Jack. The 2016 NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year, the answer to that is a guy that's not playing this year right now, and Cowboys are having problems, is Dak Prescott, Jack.
Dak Prescott. Look, I came close, right? Who stands? I came a few feet away from getting it right.
Your record is what your record is, Jack. Yeah, I think that's like over.
Wow, that's hard to believe in one sense that it's only been 4 years since he took over for Tony Romo.
Yeah.
Only 4 years. I swear to you, Mac, I would have thought it feels more like 6 years.
Yeah,
that year he took over. Well, that year he took over, the Cowboys went 13-3. People forget how good they went. Jason Garrett was coach of the year.
Definitely.
I mean, it seems like ages ago. And the only reason they didn't go to the Super Bowl, Dak Prescott hooked up against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers in the first game in the playoffs, and they had a shootout. It was Dak Prescott played great, but that was the greatest game of Aaron Rodgers' career. Beating the Cowboys. He was phenomenal. But then, of course, they had a letdown and they lost to the Falcons the next weekend, for the NFC Championship game. And then the Falcons blew that 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl to Tom Brady, in which Brady really was the GOAT in the second half, the way he brought the Patriots back in that game.
I agree with all that, Jack, but you still missed the trivia.
Bottom line, I missed the question, but I had to kind of cover it up. Man. I don't know why. When you asked me the question, the Cowboys were sticking in, but no, I would have thought Dak Prescott, was a rookie in 2015 or 2014, sometime
Yeah,
in
he's
2016, only 4 years ago.
very
Wow.
young player, still a very young player, Jack.
We don't
So what
realize
we're
that.
going to do, folks, we're going to go ahead and take our first commercial break. We'll be back. I'll be asking Jack, our great boxing expert here on the show, some boxing topics and questions, and then we'll move on, and we have the great Brian Henny coming up at 9:30, MLB anchor and analyst, and also another a very boxing knowledgeable man. So he'll be up at 9:30. So we'll be right back after this, folks. Stay right with us, please, and we will see you in a few.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVET. Each year, AMVET's members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVET's posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETs by joining today at amvets.org.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211 Info Line. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma. I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye-bye. Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again?
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. Zero tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's the first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I made it clear to Matt that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, Bill, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
How you doing, folks? And welcome back to the Mac and Jeff Sports Show. We're here live Wednesday through Sunday. We're here at 8 to 10 a.m. here for your sports information and updates. We have weekly guests that come on. Iceman John Scully couldn't make it because he's down in Florida under quarantine today. We do have Brian Henny coming up. He's a great MLB analyst. He works for the network as the anchor, and he also knows a lot about boxing. So we have a lot of boxing on the show as we do every Thursday, Jeff.
So he works for the PBC, and so on, and, various boxing outlets.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's a very knowledgeable man, and we're glad to have him. Just to reminder and to people that haven't tuned in yet, Iceman John Scully just received the Burt Sugar Award for his contribution and his knowledge in boxing. So congratulations. So what I want to do, I got my own boxing expert right here on the show with me, legendary writer Jack Hirsch and former president of the American Boxing Association of America, been in the business for years. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you so many questions that I was going to ask John. And we talked about this before, Jack. Is he the new star of boxing? I mean, that big win on pay-per-view. Is he legit? Is he going to be around? Is he going to be a great
Oh, he's very legit. Mac, that lightweight / junior welterweight division, going from 135 to 140 pounds. What stars they have over there now. Gervonta Davis, is a breakout star now. Teofimo Lopez beating Vasily Lomachenko. He's a major star. But the best of them all could be Devin Haney, who's fighting this weekend against Yorkis Gamboa. And there's Ryan Garcia. He's fighting Luke Campbell. Ryan Garcia is a breakout star waiting to happen. So you might have 4 potential superstars in and around the same weight class. And something like that hasn't really been seen around there since we had the days of Leonard, Hearns, Benitez, Duran, Hagler, like all kind of bunched up together. And if you consider these guys might move up to 140 soon, they're close to the division that Terrence Crawford is in at 147. And it's a load of fun. And even the leftover guys, the leftovers are pretty good, like Keith Thurman, Manny Pacquiao, so on. I mean, so around the 135 to 147 weight class, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, Jack. There should be some real exciting matches coming up soon in the near future. I'll go to the heavyweights real quick with you. And, does Usyk deserve a shot at Joshua before there's a potential, Joshua Fury fight? I mean, I think Usyk is a very good heavyweight, has incredible skills, is very tough. And do you think that he deserves a shot even before that potential big fight with Fury?
Well, that's if Joshua wants to fight him. Listen, Alexander Usyk, great amateur, great cruiserweight champion, unbeaten. He just moved up to heavyweight, and he didn't exactly set the division on fire. He beat Derek Chisora on a reasonably close decision, had to come on the second half of the fight. Chisora was in great shape. He was fired up to pull off the upset. But Usyk didn't really stamp himself as anything exceptional as a heavyweight. Could he beat Anthony Joshua? Maybe. Usyk's good enough that, and he has the skills that maybe he can beat anyone. But to say that he's in a position to push the issue, not yet. Really not yet. It's really up to Joshua what he wants to do. And Tyson Fury.
Yeah. Do you think that there would be a lot of interest possibly in a Usyk Wilder match? I mean, Wilder, of course, has gone a little nuts, but he did have that one draw with Fury. He does have great power. And Usyk, of course, is a lot of skills. Do you think there would be interest in a fight like that?
Wilder's went off the deep end. What I don't understand is he's supposed to have a contract to fight Fury a third time.
Right.
And he keeps saying he wants Fury to live up to the contract. Well, if he truly has a contract with Fury, enforce it in the courts if he does have that contract.
Right.
But he's not doing it. Okay. Instead, Wilder's coming up with all these crazy accusations, saying his old trainer, Mark Breland, spiked his water, which is ludicrous, which is like crazy. And he's kind of lost it. He kind of reminds me of George Foreman after he got knocked out by Muhammad Ali and Zaire. Foreman, a big knockout puncher like Wilder, entered the ring with this air of invincibility. And it's very hard for a guy like Wilder when he is taken down after feeling so invincible, so hard to cope with it. If he needs anyone to counsel him, it would be George Foreman, because George Foreman would be the only one who knows how Wilder feels. And Foreman said after losing to Ali, he would pick excuses out of the air. He would just grab excuses anywhere he could until finally coming to grips with what happened. And Wilder seems messed up mentally. But to answer your question, there's no demand for a Usyk-Wilder fight. If Usyk can get one of the belt holders to fight him, that's the way to go.
Yeah.
And why would Wilder want to risk a fight with Usyk? You may as well get the rematch with the third fight against Tyson Fury. And even if you lose, you're making a bundle of money.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, Jack. I just thought there might be a little bit of interest in that because of Usyk being as great as he was in the lower category and winning, and Fury being a little messed up. I mean, Wilder being a little messed up. That maybe it might draw some interest, and they both maybe could use. Yeah,
it
and
would,
maybe.
Absolutely right. It definitely would, but that's not how the fights are made.
Yeah.
Promoters might make them that way, but at bottom line, it's a money issue. What's best for the fighter's career? And fighting one another, Usyk and Wilder, is not the best next fight in either guy's career. For Wilder, it's getting Fury back in the ring for as much money as you can get. Either you regain the title or you cash out big time.
Yeah.
And for Usyk, Wilder doesn't hold a title.
Yeah.
So why not just get one of the belt holders, and that's going to be better for him in the long run.
Okay. The best fight coming up, the best nearest fight coming up, Jack. Which fight should people be looking for? The matchup coming up, the closest, and what you think is going to be an outstanding fight.
Well, I like Errol Spence and Danny Garcia. Very intriguing because Errol Spence was one of the best fighters pound for pound, but then he had a terrible automobile accident in which he's lucky to be alive, lucky to have supposedly recovered. He wasn't wearing a seatbelt, got thrown from the automobile. He could have easily gotten killed. I hope he's extremely thankful that he was able to recover from it. But before that, then Errol Spence was riding high. Very few people would have picked Danny Garcia from Philadelphia to beat Errol Spence. But now we don't know what Errol Spence we're getting. Danny Garcia, who's very, very good, an old school fighter, a tremendous fighter, he can actually win this fight. Also, what's a little bit intriguing is Terence Crawford next fighting I think November 27th against Kell Brook from England. Kell Brook is a former champion, supposedly past his peak, but sometimes we think a guy's past his peak and he can gather himself together. And Kell Brook at the top of his game, keep in mind, he beat Sean Porter. He fought a much bigger Gennady Golovkin, who he gave absolute fits to when Golovkin was in his prime. And if Terence Crawford has gone a little stale, Kell Brook could conceivably spring a massive upset.
I definitely think it's going to be a good fight. I was going to get to that next, Jack, as a matter of fact. And again, you beat me to it.
Listen, we can still talk about that, a while. I mean, Terence Crawford's... he's been with Top Rank with Bob Arum.
Right.
Now, we both know, Mac, that Bob Arum is one of the greatest promoters in history.
Sure.
The problem is different fighters with different promoters. All the top-of-the-line fighters and Terence Crawford's weight class, the welterweight division, are affiliated with Al Heyman of the PBC.
Right.
Al Heyman of the PBC is not letting any of his guys fight Terence Crawford, probably because Crawford would beat him. That would be my guess. Or what might be more likely is Heyman wouldn't be able to have the whole promotion. So Terence Crawford has had a difficult time getting marketable opponents to fight him. Arum's had that difficult time. And Arum keeps saying, wait, there are guys in the lower weight divisions who are going to be coming up, and the big fights will eventually get there. And Arum is telling the truth.
Right.
The thing about it, you can only wait so long. Mac, think of yourself as a player, one of the best players in the league, or maybe the best player in the league, but you're on a losing team. Think of Mike Trout.
Yeah, okay.
Mike Trout might someday get sick of never going to the playoffs. At least the Angels are doing things. They're getting other players, and the effort is there. But that's what's going on with Terence Crawford. The big fights are eluding him because he's tied up with Top Rank promotionally. And the ironic thing about it, Top Rank is probably the best company to be affiliated with in boxing. But in the case of Terence Crawford, that's not playing out.
Okay, Jack. So we're going to push on to one of my favorite segments we do every Thursday. It's called It Ain't Gonna Happen, Jack. And this is where, folks, I ask the great Jack Hirsch the future of what could possibly happen, what his opinion is on certain situations in sports and whether it's going to happen or it ain't going to happen. So we're halfway through the football season, Jack, right? We're right there, and this is where teams are going to make some decisions, whether it be trades, players, whether they go on winning streaks, or are they folding. So my first question for you is, of course, we know Chicago took on the big contract of Nick Foles. There's been problems between the coach and Mitch Trubisky, where they kind of ask him to do something he really doesn't do well, and that's be a pocket quarterback. The man moves around. The GM drafted him. Foles has been having problems in the last few games throwing the ball. I mean, he's not been really accurate. So will Mitch Trubisky, will he be named the starting quarterback for the Chicago Bears very soon?
Wow. Ain't going to happen.
Okay.
Because I think the Bears right now, it's making the playoffs. I mean, they're within range to do that. It's 50-50 whether they're a playoff team or not. And these last 8 games are very important. They're making a playoff run. If the Bears should fall out of contention, if they should go from, let's say, 5-3, which I think they are now, if I'm not mistaken, and they should all of a sudden become 5-6, then I think Mitch Trubisky comes back, because I think they're going to want to show they're going to want to showcase him for other teams. Maybe get his value up there, or maybe give Mitch Trubisky one last chance to convince them that he's the guy.
You know, Jack, I believe, now this is speaking from a coach's perspective.
Yeah.
Nick Foles is not the answer as a starting quarterback. He never has been. He's like you call a relief pitcher, where, he went in for the Eagles, brought him to the Super Bowl, played out of his mind. But when he started at other teams, his record is not that good. And the last few games, now remember, they replaced Trubisky, and the Chicago Bears were winning. I mean, it wasn't like the Chicago Bears lost every game. They were definitely in the hunt. They replaced him with Foles. They end up winning a couple games, but lately, I mean, he's missed some wide open people. His arm doesn't – he's not that accurate. So I think it's going to happen pretty soon, in my opinion anyway, Jack.
Mac, I'm laughing when the great Byron Williams is back on this show. You and him are laughing at me when I mentioned relief pitches for quarterbacks.
Right.
Foles is perfect. you could put him in for an elite start. If your elite starter is struggling that game,
Right.
having just a bad afternoon, Nick Foles could come in out of the bullpen, get you a win, and then the next week Nick Foles should be back on the bench and your starter should be starting. You're coming around. You got to Byron to get him to come around. I know Byron's thinking, I never played the game. What do I know? And he's not all that wrong, but,
And you could throw Earl Morrall in that discussion too, Jack. You could throw the great Earl.
Earl Morrall started with the Lions. He was a good starter with the New York Giants, but then he went to the Baltimore Colts. He was Johnny Unitas's backup. And, of course, when Unitas went down, he was the league MVP, where he led the Colts on a great run to the Super Bowl, but then they got upset by the Jets. But then 2 years later in the Super Bowl, Johnny U starting the game. Johnny U goes down with an injury. Earl Morrall is the quarterback at the end of the game, which was a heartwarming story, and the Colts won that Super Bowl 2 years later.
And don't forget about the Dolphins, their perfect season. The quarterback for that season.
Great Mac.
Yeah.
Great. The Miami Dolphins, when Bob Greasy went down early in the year, he led them to a whole bunch of victories into the playoffs. But, of course, Don Shula, seeing the way they blew the game with the Colts, gave Morrall a quick hook in the playoffs, which was okay because Bob Greasy was their starter.
Yeah.
He didn't want to make the same mistake sticking with Morrall too long. But
I agree. I agree.
Good one, Mac.
Yes. So I mean that what you said in part in certain circumstances, Jack, is correct. The Giants.
Just one thing: the unbeaten Dolphin team. When we think of that team, you have to think of Earl Morrall, his contribution during the year. People won't mention him, but he had a major one.
You definitely have to. He's the one that led that team to a perfect season, if you want to be honest. The Giants will sit Daniel Jones if his mistakes cause the Giants to lose versus Washington.
Ain't going to happen. Once they sit Daniel Jones, it's all over. It's all over. The only way a Daniel Jones would have gotten seated if you had a veteran backup like Ryan Fitzpatrick and you had a terrible offensive line just to spare him. But once they sit Daniel Jones for the guys that are backing him up, it's not going to work out. That means they're ready to move on from him next season. It ain't going to happen. Either they stick with Daniel Jones all the way. It's all or nothing with Daniel Jones.
I agree with that 100%. Antonio Brown will start out like a model player, but come playoff time, if they're there, his true character will show again.
Would that be a bad thing in the playoffs, Mac? Would that be a bad thing? Gonna happen with an asterisk next to it. Him and Tom Brady are very close. How you and I and fans out there perceive things could be different from reality. Antonio Brown could come back to the huddle and start, snapping at Tom Brady, but it could be done in a brotherly fashion. Like, come on, Tom, get me the darn ball. I'm open. But it wouldn't be done with any true hostility. But outwardly, it would look that way to us. Antonio Brown, if he's his old self, you want his true colors to come out because he's a great, great receiver. And Tom Brady is the ultimate competitor. So when you get guys like that, there's gonna be friction going back and forth, a little bit outwardly. It's gonna happen but it's not gonna be as bad as it appears.
Well, Jack, I think if that does happen, that might hurt Tampa Bay. And now when I'm talking about his character issues, I'm talking about fighting with teammates. I'm talking about the off-field antics that end up distracting the team from what they're supposed to be doing.
No, it ain't going to happen, the off-field antics. Listen, he's living with Tom Brady now. Okay? And keep this in mind with Antonio Brown. He did go a lot of years in Pittsburgh where his conduct wasn't an issue, was it? Finally,
well, it was, but they kind of kept it under wraps, Jack. And you had a very strong coach, which you do with Tampa too. You had a very strong coach who could deflect a lot of that. But after he left, there was a lot of remarks and quotes that came out from the Pittsburgh locker room that he was just a handful all the time. And his relationship with Ben Roethlisberger was like that of basically with Eli and Beckham, when one day he loved him and the next day he was complaining about him. So,
but with Beckham and Eli, it was never personal.
Right.
Personal. Beckham never disliked Eli.
Right.
If anything, he liked Eli.
Yeah,
he just didn't like how Eli threw him the ball.
Right.
Okay. He didn't think Eli got enough mustard on the ball or threw it to him enough
which was
times.
the best years. Which was the best years as a receiver was when he was with the Giants.
But Antonio Brown didn't like the way Ben talked to him, and Ben could be a bit of a jerk.
Sure.
And he didn't like the way Ben would come off. Like a guy like Antonio Brown, you don't tell him to get his head out of his behind.
Right.
Or something to that effect. Some guys you could say that to. Some guys, you have to be you could be firm, but you have to watch how how you word things to them.
Sure. Definitely agree with that. The Miami Dolphins will win the AFC East, Jack.
You want to know something? I'm going to go out on the limb now and say it's going to happen, that it's actually going to happen. New England's not in the equation. Miami has upside. I could see them the last day of the year somehow getting by Buffalo. I mean, they have to beat Buffalo when they meet them. But I can see that happening because they're just getting better and better. Look, they beat the Rams, who are an elite team last week, and Tua threw for less than 100 yards.
Right.
I mean, and Tua's getting his feet wet. Tua's just going to get better and better as the year goes along. And I can see Miami, squeaking through at the end and stealing the AFC East. I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's going to happen.
Okay, we talked about this earlier, and it's another Giants question for you. The Giants will win 6 games this year, Jack.
No, I mean, I talked about it. It's conceivable, but it ain't going to happen because they have 8 games left. They're 1-7. You say to win 6 games, they got to go 5-3.
Right.
They're playing hard enough to go 5-3. It's possible they'll go 5-3. I'm going to say ain't going to happen. If you said they were going to win 5 games this year and it meant they'd go 4-4, like my ears would go up a little more. You know the way a dog's ears go up, like thinking, but it's a little bit of a stretch, 5-3. It's conceivable, like I said before, but the Giants are going to be better than a 2-6 team. They're going to go anywhere over their last 8 games, anywhere from 3-5 to 5-3. They'll win 3, 4, 5 games. I'll make that prediction now. So 5 is the most optimistic thing, but odds are ain't going to happen.
Yeah, I mean they got the Redskins, who they've already beaten, coming up Sunday. They still got to play the Eagles in Dallas again, and they're not setting the world on fire by any means.
Wasn't Bart Oates funny yesterday when I think you, Mac, mentioned, that's a winnable game. That They have the Redskins on their schedule. And Bart Oates said, I was listening to a Redskin podcast. They were looking at their schedule. They saw the Giants on it and thought, that's a winnable game.
Sure. Hey, listen, I'm not. Let's put it this way. I think the Redskins are going to be pretty good. Their new head coach, Rivera, is a great coach. He proved it already. He was one of those players, again, that wasn't the best, but he was a very good player. And they seem to be headed in the right direction. They're playing a lot more physical.
Rivera is a good, solid coach. When you use the word great coach, I mean, I don't know. I mean, he did have that great year with Carolina, where they went 15-1, and they went to the Super Bowl that year, and Cam Newton was MVP. Wow. When you think of it, Cam Newton was the league MVP, took a team to a 15-1 record. And Mike Shula was actually Cam Newton's offensive coordinator. And Mike Shula also was Daniel Jones's guy, the offensive coordinator. Now Mike Shula, I think, if I'm not mistaken, he's working with Drew Lock, with the Denver Broncos, quarterback coach.
He's in Denver.
Pat Shermer, the Giant coach, is Denver's offensive coordinator, and he requested Mike Shula come along,
Right.
to work with Drew Lock. And apparently he's doing a good job because Drew Lock, has exceeded expectations.
The Eagles will finish 500 or above, Jack.
They're 3-4-1 now. They'd have to go 5. Let's eliminate ties. They'd have to go 5-3. If you do the math, and that would put them a half game over 500. They've had injuries. They are going to get a little better. I'm going to say it's going to happen. They'll go, I think they'll go 5-3. They'll finish 8-7-1. And that'll be more than enough to win the division. That would be my thought. But, maybe they go 7-8-1, and that'll be good enough to win the division.
Yeah.
6-9-1 might win this division.
It looked that way. It definitely looked that way. The Patriots will finish at 500 this year, Jack.
No, the Patriots are what are they? They've only won 2 games.
They're 3-5 right now, Jack.
3-5 or 2-5? Okay, but regardless, you said Patriots over 500?
Well, they'll finish 500.
I don't think so. When Bill Belichick is coming out and making excuses, which is out of character for him, already Bill Belichick is saying why they're not having a good year, and he's volunteering it. He's saying it's not an excuse. When you're saying things aren't an excuse, usually they are an excuse. He's saying the money went into the cap so they could win the past championships.
Right.
If that truly is the reason why, that's a brilliant reason why. You do anything to win a championship, even if you deplete your roster down the line. Because, one championship to me is worth a few years of misery after that if you could grab one, without question. Sure. But, no, things are not going, well at New England. I mean, their core defense is a lot better than people think they are, but things are just missing there. It's like a rebuild year. Yeah, at the very best, they're rebooting at the very best right now, but certainly they're not going to be a big factor going forward.
The Bills will not make the playoffs, Jack.
Ain't going to happen. The Bills will get in. We talked about the Dolphins. Either the Bills will win their division or if the Dolphins somehow sneak by them at the end. Bills' record will be good enough to nab a playoff spot. I'm concerned about the last 4 games at Buffalo.
Yeah.
They lose 2 of them, but then you feel they're playing the Jets after losing 2 in a row, and the Jets are medicine for a team that's lost 2 in a row. And you feel they're going to feast on the Jets, kind of the way the Chiefs did last Sunday. I know the Jets offered a little resistance, but that's kind of window dressing, nothing more than that. And they only could beat the Jets 18-10. They were struggling to beat the Jets that game.
They were losing
and then they had Cam Newton that fumbled late in the game for the Patriots. New England would at the very least tied it up or won the game, in regulation. Right. So I'm not impressed with when it's happened a few weeks in a row. That's red flags are coming out.
I definitely agree, and Jack, I think that the Bills. We thought the Bills' defense was going to be really good, and it's really taken a step back. And you cannot depend. I don't care how great an athlete and how great a competitor Josh Allen is, but he's a lot like a few other running quarterbacks in the league, where he's got a cannon for an arm, but in certain spots he gets inaccurate on some throws that he should make, and normally they're in big spots. Because I think down deep, Jack, they want to run with the ball. As soon as they see that open lane, they're thinking, run. A guy comes open, and they kind of are in between of what they want to do. And I think, you're going to see a lot of these running quarterbacks, and mark my words, from Jackson to even to Josh Allen, even to Cam Newton. I think they're in between of whether they should take off with the ball or throw the ball, and it messes their mechanics up, as opposed to, say, a Wilson who goes back originally to throw the ball but runs if he has to. The throw is always in his mind first. There's no decision, a mix-up decision, whether to run with the ball or pass the ball. And I think this is where a lot of running quarterbacks run into problems with accuracy, Jack.
Well, you know what it is? If you have a gift, it's hard not to use it. And certain quarterbacks, you mentioned like Lamar Jackson, so on, they have that great gift to run.
Yeah.
And they fake back the pass and they feel they can pick the yardage up running. It's hard to have the discipline to stay in the pocket and remain in the pocket or just move around a little bit. So they tend to take off. And so much of quarterbacking, it's instincts. You have to make that split-second decision. That's the difference between a guy being open and a guy not being open. And you don't have any realistic time to think things out. Okay? Yeah. The great ones can get rid of the ball. Okay? Even when they're not mobile. You take Joe Willie Namath. With all the injuries he had, he couldn't run around with the Jets, but there was no quarterback better at picking up the blitz than him. There was a certain instinct of how he could get rid of the ball. Dan Marino, you couldn't blitz Dan Marino. He would pick you apart. But certain other quarterbacks who have the physical tools, they don't react quick enough. And, you know, I hate to say it, either you have it or you don't.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think you could teach something like that.
I think there's so much, and Steve Young talked about it. And Steve Young, he played here in Connecticut. One of the fastest quarterbacks I've ever seen run with the ball. I know he's running like a 4.4 40.
Yeah.
And he said the biggest problem for me was to go to pass first because I always ran with the football. And once he learned that, once he disciplined himself to pass first, is when he became a great quarterback. So my last question for you, and ain't going to happen, the Jets, Jack, do they draft Trevor Lawrence and say goodbye to Sam Darnold? And does it matter?
They have to be in a position to draft Trevor Lawrence. I mean, obviously, if they don't win a game, they will be. If they win only one game, there's a good chance they will. You never know what the slot's going to be in the draft, but let's assume they're in a position to draft him. Who's the coach going to be? If it's Adam Gase, it's going to happen. They're going to draft Trevor Lawrence. If there's a new coach, who knows? But with that said,
is it going to happen?
They are going to draft. I believe, yes, they are going to draft Trevor Lawrence, because how good can Sam Darnold be if they don't win a game this year?
That's very true, and unfortunately, I don't really think it's Sam Darnold's fault as much it is the team. But I do agree, if they are in position, that they will draft Trevor Lawrence, Jack. They will. That will keep the fans happy for at least 2 years. So we're going to take our last commercial break for today before we have the great Brian Henny come up with us at about 9:30. So stick with us, and we'll be back with some more sports right after these messages.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVET. Each year, AMVET's members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVET's posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETs by joining today at amvets.org.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211 Info Line. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma. I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that.
Alex is just
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. We want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah, 0 tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's the first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I made it clear to Matt, that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
Kids that age really listen.
They never admit it, Bill, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Try.
Welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show here on our Mac and Jack Sports Show here every Sunday, Wednesday through Sunday. Our Sundays are a big football show. Wednesday, we normally start out with our celebration theme in sports. Thursday is normally our big boxing day, Jack. Friday, we do our weekend review. Saturday, our fun debate show. And Sunday, like I said, is our big football show, where we have our weekly guests coming on pretty much every day. Today, Iceman couldn't join us because of quarantine down in Florida. But up next, we got Brian Henny, who's scheduled to be in at 9:30, and he's going to talk to
Brian Henny, great guest, Brian Henny.
Yeah. Brian Henny will be talking about Major League Baseball and even some boxing for us. He's a very knowledgeable man, and we're happy to have him scheduled to come in. Jack, so getting back to Bill Belichick and what he said, I agree with you. That's the first time I've ever heard Bill Belichick really come out and give a interview where he offered information. Maybe he's feeling a little pressure. Maybe he's trying to give the Patriot fans some reason to why, he's not his team is not as competitive, or I shouldn't say competitive, because it's not that they're not competitive. It's just that they're not winning those close games they normally have in the past. Depleted team with the COVID opt-outs, injuries, a new quarterback, a new offensive system. His defense is still a very solid defense. His special teams are still very solid. But with Cam Newton at the helm, it's a different offense than it was with Brady, where Brady was doing timing patterns with his wide receivers. He depended on, them going to the places that they were supposed to be. When he threw the ball, he threw it to that area. And even their big wide receiver, their best wide receiver got hurt. He's not playing. So is that a reason, Jack? Is it a reason that, they did come out and they did throw all their money towards the last 2 Super Bowls? But, I really can't remember them paying a lot of money to a lot of players besides Brady. So, I mean, I don't remember them paying for any big free agents, Jack.
Well, even Brady was a little bit underpaid because he has a very wealthy wife that we know about. So he wasn't in need of the money quite as much as the average superstar player would be. How do you like that, average superstar player, that term?
Right.
I don't believe what Belichick is saying. You don't have an attitude, well, we're throwing all our money into winning now, and we know in a year or two we're not going to be that good because we're doing that. I don't think anyone thinks that way. I don't think it even crosses his mind. Bill Belichick doesn't say much, but he hears a lot. And obviously, the Brady comparisons, like who was more important to who, he hears that. It bothers him. He's human. It's unfair, by the way. I mean, the reason the Patriots won because it was a group effort. And, primarily it's the coach that sets the team up, the ownership and so on. But they wouldn't have won without an outstanding player like Tom Brady either. And Brady wouldn't have won had he not been in an outstanding program set up by Bill Belichick. So it was teamwork all the way. But it's getting to him. It's getting to Bill Belichick a little bit. Just the idea he felt a need to explain, or come up with some type of excuse. It reminds me of a boxer we're going to talk about. Whenever a boxer loses a fight, how many of them say it was beat fair square? That's it, end of the day. He'll say, well, I hurt my hand in training. I couldn't spar for 3 weeks. I'm not using that as an excuse. He says he's not using it as an excuse, but there's an excuse right over there. Okay?
Right.
And so this is that version Bill Belichick is making an excuse, saying we were due for down year. If they were, he could have said that at the beginning of the year. We put all our money into it, and he didn't. He's feeling some of the pressure.
I definitely agree with that. We have Brian Henny backstage right now. His mic is muted and his camera's not on from what I can see. So now his mic is unmuted, Brian. We can't hear you yet because I haven't brought you on live. But your video right now, you have like a person instead of you back there right now. And if you check on the stop cam button underneath you, you should be able to bring your camera up, hopefully, and we can get you on here live. I think we can hear you. So I'm going to bring you on and we'll start talking to you. Let's see if I can get you. Brian, can you hear me now?
I can. Hello.
Okay, hey, Brian.
Hey, guys, how are you?
Not too bad. We can't see you on video right now. If you see there's a mute by your mic and a stop cam right next to it, maybe if you click that on, we'll be able to see you.
All right. Yeah. Now, it says your device doesn't support video. You want me to go out and come back in? I can come back in.
If you want to try it, and even if you can't get on next time, we'll talk to you anyway. But yeah, go ahead and give that a try, Brian. Go back out and come back on the same link. Okay, so
Brian's like a big time baseball player playing for the Yankees. Now he shows up for the Long Island Ducks and he's looking for his uniform in the locker room. He's not used to, our way of doing things. We're like the Long Island Ducks, right?
Right. We're waiting
with all the technicians and all the things at his disposal, and
right. So we'll see if we can get him back up, if he can connect. There he is again, and I guess there's a problem with the video. Brian, let me bring him up. Hey, Brian, can you hear me?
Yep. Sorry, it doesn't support it on this. I Zoom all the time, but this doesn't work. Sorry.
Okay, no problem, Brian. Well, it's great
Brian,
to
I
have
normally get my wife to help me. If yours is around, maybe that'll work.
This is a shame. I showered and everything.
Oh my God. So anyway, we do have the great Brian Henny on. He's a Major League Baseball anchor and analyst. He's also a boxing expert, and we're glad to have him on. What I want to start with you, Brian, about is baseball analytics. There's been a lot of talk about it, especially after the World Series. Of course, managers have always been using, video. They write down certain situations or they put them in their computers on matchups, on, players versus pitchers versus certain players. But Tampa Bay, they pull out their ace Snell with only throwing 73 pitches. He's dominating the Dodgers. His fastball is cutting them up. His slider is breaking, and they can't hit him. And just because it's his third time through the order, and the analytics say, well, that's when his pitching kind of drops a little bit, and the batters start hitting him. They pull him, and in my opinion, anyway, Brian, I think a lot of managing and coaching in all sports has to do with the feel for a player and the feel at the time of the game. And do you think, in your opinion anyway, that the Tampa Bay's manager made a big mistake pulling out Snell?
Yes, I did. I think sometimes you can be an excellent manager and make a bad move, and I think that's what Kevin Cash did. I would throw it out there. Like I completely hear everything you're saying. I've written essays for it on MLB Now on my show because of the context, everything that was happening at the time. Because I'll give you an example. Remember the last couple of years of CC Sabathia with the Yankees? He would routinely, in big games, start off, sensational, 3 shutout innings, 4 shutout innings, and be sent back out there looking for the 5th, looking for the 6th inning. And there would be the inevitable drop-off. It reached a point where you had to get the feeling where, hey, this is happening. Kind of like, the famous Grady Little game with Pedro Martinez against the Yankees in the American League Championship Series 2003, where, hey, Pedro's over 100 pitches. He's a different pitcher right now. Recognize that. He looks the same, but he's different. So if that's the case with Blake Snell, I could see it. But it really wasn't. If that was the MO for the Rays throughout the whole World Series, I could see it. But it actually wasn't. For the previous 5 games in that World Series, the starting pitcher for the Rays had seen the lineup a third time. Several of those guys had actually gone deep into the lineup, like 5 deep into the lineup a third time around. So I don't get it, except that Kevin Cash didn't trust Blake Snell. He had a small drop-off in his velocity, small drop-off in his spin rate, like these are the new analytics.
Right.
But I agree with you. That top of the lineup, the first 4 had gone 0 for 8 with 7 strikeouts. I'm willing to believe until there's some hard contact. And I think it was, and given the state of his bullpen, Nick Anderson had given up runs in 6 straight games.
Right.
It's not analytics. He made a mistake.
Right.
Brian, one of the most underrated managers of the last, let's say, 3 decades was Tom Kelly of the Minnesota Twins. And he made 2 pitching moves that no one talks about today, but could be questioned. In the 87 World Series, he removed Frank Viola, his start at the end of 8 innings, and he brought in Jeff Reardon to close that game out against the Cardinals. And had Reardon slipped up, people would have questioned, well, why did he take Frank Viola out? Because Frank Viola was pitching great. And also a few years later, he let Jack Morris pitch 10 innings against Atlanta. That's unheard of. A starting pitcher going into the 10th inning. And after the game, Tom Kelly even questioned himself. He said, I can't believe I let Jack Morris come out for the 10th inning. So it's easy to question after the fact when things go wrong.
Oh, no question. That's what my whole show is about. And that's what I do, at MLB Network is don't base the decision on the result. Because every time you're going to have to make a decision, guess what? You don't have the result. You'd have it afterwards, and you can look back and say this or that. But a lot of these things are difficult. Dave Roberts of the Dodgers, 2 years ago, got in a lot of hot water because he took out Rich Hill while he was dealing. Same thing. He was hot. Rich Hill was hot. But Rich Hill had a history of falling off a cliff at a certain point in his pitch count. You could also see that Rich Hill was losing spin on his curveball, and Rich Hill gets by on his curveball. That's his big pitch. So he had gone, I don't know, he was in the 6th inning, or maybe it was the 5th inning, maybe it was like 4 2/3. And forgive me, not remembering precisely, but he was cruising along, everything was great, but he was starting to labor, and you could see Rich Hill, laboring and snapping off his curveball, putting everything he had into it. At this point, he's probably 35, 36 years old already. And so that's a point where, everyone said, you have to stay with him. I said, what, until he fails? Why do you have to stay with him until he fails if you have a fully stocked bullpen? And by the way, Dave Roberts did, but the bullpen failed, and Roberts was seen as a GOAT. In this case, again, it's not like you bring up the classic, Frank Viola, 8th inning. You go 8 solid innings. Your guy is kind of gassed. He's at, I'm going to guess Viola's at 115 pitches. And you have a killer closer, right? Like you said, Reardon in this case, or a Rivera, someone who is coming. I'm a big believer in that. Fresh arm, 3 outs, clean inning. Do it. You have to trust your team. However, at that point in the World Series where you're an elimination game and you really don't have that, your bullpen is kind of gassed at that point. Even Diego Castillo was not just lights out. You didn't have an automatic option, and I'm just stunned that Kevin Cash made that decision, given that he's my manager of the year pick this year in the American League. There's no question, but he made a mistake.
Brian, you mentioned pitch counts, and I can't help but think back as a Yankee fan to 1995. In that decisive Game 5, the Yankees lost in the playoffs to Seattle. David Cone threw, I believe, 147 pitches, and Buck Showalter didn't even know what he had in the bullpen. He had a young, unproven reliever called Mariano Rivera, who he didn't bring in. And he could have brought in Rivera to close things out, but the Yankees didn't know what they had at that time.
Well, that's a great example, Jack, because it proves that, hey, the pendulum may have swung too far in this case, but not that long ago. And I'm talking, Grady Little was 2003. You're talking mid-90s. And Matt Harvey coming out for the 9th inning to finish that World Series game for the Mets, when he also, at 100 pitches, turns into a pumpkin. I mean, there's no question he was a very different guy after 100 pitches. But they sent him back out there for the 9th inning to see what he had because he really wanted to. And he said, I want to finish this game. That's only 2015. That's 5 years ago where, okay, let's roll the dice. Let's let a guy go well over 100 pitches. Let's see what he has. And that's, I disagree with that thinking. I also disagree with, hey, it's the, 5th inning or the 6th inning. He's at 73 pitches. It's a very different story. Unless you have data that says, hey, at 73 pitches on, this guy's a very different guy. Get him out. But again, that was not the case with Snell.
Brian, I feel that you have an ace and you got him there as your number 1 pitcher. It's Game 6. He's cruising along. The Dodgers have no answer for him. It's up a weak hit. And I feel if I'm going to lose, I'm going to lose with my best option. I don't care if, even if I have Goose Gossage in the bullpen and Ron Guidry is still throwing 96 miles an hour and his slider is breaking. I'm going to go with my best option, and that's my ace, and that's how I felt anyway.
Well, yeah, never do your opponent a favor, right? Don't the Dodgers are there going, geez, we've got to get through this. Maybe he's tiring. Maybe we can get, we have to go through another inning or 2 or maybe 3 before we have a real shot here. And there's no question at the time that they wanted him out. Pitching is an art form. Again, I'm deep into the analytics, but, pitching is changing speeds, changing eye level. Effective velocity is like the new analytics term for it. But that's just the craft of pitching in changing eye levels, speed, and location. And that your mind has difficulty dealing with different sequences of pitches. So he had shown in that the first 3 guys in the order, I mentioned the first 4, first 3 guys in the orders had all struck out every time and had not put the ball in play. They hadn't put the ball in play. I'm sorry. You're going to have to touch the ball before I believe those next 3 will have any success because Blake Snell was fooling them. He had them on the string. And when you have guys like that, it shows that you're staying back, you're poised, you're changing speeds and eye level and location. You're in command, as they say.
Brian,
And
yeah. Should Blake Snell have been more animated? Because I can recall Mike Mussina chasing Joe Torre away when Joe Torre was going to take him out of the game. Matt Harvey talked Terry Collins out of taking him out, something you just mentioned with that World Series game. And Jack Morris practically told Tom Kelly, I'm going to kill you if you take me out of this 7th game of the World Series. Had Blake Snell thrown a fit before Kevin Cash got to the line, would that have made a difference? Should he have acted a little more animated, saying, you're not taking me out of this game?
no, that's eyewash, as they say in the majors. That's just that's not helpful. And through the whole season, they've showed faith in their manager, in their pitching coach, in their whole system, in that they do things together. So that's showing up your manager at that point. They're used to him coming out and doing things like that, and you got to believe in it. And when he's out there, he's not out there to have a conversation. Jack, that's different. If your manager comes out to say, how you doing? That's one thing. Like if he'd given up 3 rockets to the gap, but other than that, you're making trouble for no reason. So I don't blame Snell. Snell did the exact right thing. Manager comes out, give me the ball, he goes.
Yeah. Hey, Brian, and speaking of baseball, and I've talked about this a lot, especially with the younger teams, I feel that I know your opinion on this, but I feel they've come way too far away from small ball and putting pressure on the pitcher, catcher, and the defense, where, you don't see them doing as much bunting, as much double stealing, as much hit and run, even to the squeeze plays at home. And I believe, we've gone too far away, whether we're trying to hit a home run or the ball to the wall or striking out. And I think it's for a lot of smaller teams, not as much as the bigger teams with a lot of free agents. But do you feel they've come too far away from that, Brian?
Oh, no question. But it's also players correctly reacting to incentives. We always talk. Everybody says at MLB Network, I have all these former major league players who talk this all. They've been saying this for years and years. And on the other side of things, it's like, okay, but what works? And over 6 months, what actually works better is drawing walks and hitting home runs. That works better. We've seen in the playoffs, you're playing, for a lead, putting pressure on the opponent, and you're playing, just to get a single win, and you race to 3 or you race to 4, and you win the series. So it's very different baseball. And we saw a couple of times, I don't know if you saw some of these games, Carlos Correa, George Springer, both of the Astros, Will Smith of the Dodgers, both get in like second and third situations and slap the ball the other way, go with the pitch and hit it through an open area. Like, that's beautiful. But you need to really incentivize players to do that. We're only seeing major leaguers do it now. And I don't care what everybody says. Everybody loves small ball. But when you're 14, 15 years old, or you're 17 years old, or you're 19 years old, or you're in the minors and you're 21 years old, what gets you promoted at every level? Power. What gets you promoted at every level on the mound? Velocity. So we talk a good game about the craft of pitching and small ball. What gets you promoted? What gets you paid? Every step of the way, we've incentivized players for power and velocity.
Interesting question. In basketball, they have a zone defense. Should the shift be outlawed in baseball?
Absolutely
it seems
not.
like it
No.
puts any pull hitter at a major disadvantage.
Well, let him not be a pull hitter. That's my other point. Don't protect these sluggers. It's like protectionism, in economics. You're protecting the slugger now. And you know who you're acing out? Will Smith, a 5'10" catcher who can smack the ball the other way. Or a guy like DJ LeMahieu, who you can't shift on. Incentivize and reward the players that don't have to, have some sort of protection scheme to help them. And maybe we'll start promoting the guy who's in high A ball or double A who can hit 310 instead of just launching bombs.
I agree with that 100%, Brian. We cover the local sports here, Brian, New York, Boston, and Philly. So I like to get your opinion on a couple of the teams here. The Yankees, what do you think the priorities are? I mean, the Yankees are in the mix, but of course we always expect, especially in this area, for them to, at least go to the World Series. But what do you think the top priorities of the Yankees are this year, bro?
Well, I just named it. LeMahieu, I think, is got to be their main thing. He's turned himself into a marvelous player his last 2 seasons. I know last year was I think it was the MVP this year in the American League. I mean, just had outrageous performance, and he does it while being very consistent. He has excellent at bats. He can play multiple positions. I think that's their number one. They also need more players like him to win in the postseason. I think postseason is largely fluke, and it becomes narrative driven. We think the Nationals are now champions, and before that they were the worst gutless losers imaginable. Because they couldn't win a series. Now suddenly they're champions because they won last year, a year before. So I think but there is something to actually having some diversity in your attack. And I think the Yankees, with all that power, are kind of in danger of losing these high-level series. Now, they won't lose to some weaker team, but there's always going to be super teams, And right now, look, Astros are still a very good team. Red Sox are down, but the Rays are a dynamite team. The Twins are still a very good team. So there's always going to be like some big shot out there that will be able to beat you. And there's always been one. Like it was the Red Sox that 1 year, the Astros 2 years. Yankees are at a high level. They're having great success. They have a great team. Their team's great. But maybe there's something more to happenstance that they haven't been able to be the best team in baseball for one of those single years. And it's probably because they are a little kind of power-centric, power-heavy, and they have a lot of swing and miss power hitters that in a single game or a series, might just fall a bit short against other super teams. So I'm not criticizing them, but I think they when you have Stanton and Judge in the middle of the lineup and you're kind of relying on that power, you just need a bunch of those smaller guys like, LeMahieu. Torres is a tremendous player, but you need someone like LeMahieu, to be at that top of the order. It makes them a very different team.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, they have to have the mix. I always say because the Yankees of the 90s there, they had their little power, but they also had some great hitters and great players to go along with that power. We'll talk a little bit about Cohen. What do you think the effect he'll have on the Mets? Do you think it's going to be right away? He's going to go out there and buy everybody he can to get signed the free agents, or like me and Jack think it's going to be a slower process where he's got to pay off some of the Mets debt and then maybe sign one good player, maybe two good players, and it's going to be a rebuilding process over there.
Oh, I think somewhere in between of what you're saying. I don't think he comes in like Steinbrenner in the 70s, but that's not the best way to do it. The Mets are already a good team. They already have like a good core players. Like you look at the top of the leaderboards the last couple of years, the names, Brandon Nimmo, Jeff McNeil, Mike Conforto, they're among like the top 15 hitters in baseball. Yeah. Like in all of baseball. They have stars there now. They had the second best offense in baseball last year. They're an outstanding team. So I think if it's strategic and you can get the right free agent, I think Steve Cohen won't hesitate to spend money. But Sandy Alderson is kind of back in charge now. He's back with the club. And I think he'll do things wisely. Like, hey, let's make strategic moves to get better. But just buying up free agents, that doesn't make sense alone. If you can make a trade, look, Lindor might be available, Nolan Arenado, players like that. I think if you can, you might buy one star player, but otherwise try to fill out the rest of your roster. Because again, you're competing with, the Dodgers, the Braves. These are very deep clubs. You've got to get deep and realize you already have star players to compete with those teams.
Brian, let's switch because we only have a few minutes left. So let's switch to boxing. I'll tell you, in all my years in the sport, I've never seen 4 breakout superstars come along at the same time as I'm seeing Teofimo Lopez, Gervonta Davis, Devin Haney, and Ryan Garcia, assuming he beats Luke Campbell decisively, which at least I'm predicting he does. And of the 4 of them, it would be so great if they could fight one another. But all 4 are with different promotional entities. Garcia with Golden Boy, Haney with Matchroom, Davis with Mayweather Promotions, and Lopez with Top Rank. But how exciting are those 4? Do you see make any comparison to the Leonard, Hearns, Benitez, Durant triangle?
Oh, yeah. No, it's hard to get there, but I hear you. Like, it's amazing. And I was having the same conversation with one of my producers saying, imagine how great it would be. Like, can you imagine how big boxing would get in the next 2 years if all four of those guys fought each other? Like, imagine if we had now again, and now, Jack, you've been following this longer than I have. Like, the absurdity of it, that they're all basically in the same division. And, I know Davis has to make a choice. He can try to make 130, but he obviously has probably maybe the best power of anybody. So 135 is easy. But imagine if there was one title, one champion, and there is, like, Lopez is the guy. Lopez is the champ. But imagine if, like, everybody fought each other. Like, not only would it be exciting fight by fight, but I think mainstream fans would come back into it. Like, there'd be no avoiding it. And it's just a shame to see. And I watch, and I'm part of the process. I'm calling fights. I've got heavyweight fights this weekend on Fox, and we kind of wait around. We get PBC fighters, but I had to watch that on a Showtime pay-per-view last weekend. How many people saw that? And I used to work for Showtime. Nothing against them; they're entitled to do a pay-per-view. But what's their buy rate? That type of fight, it reminded me, that fight was so good, guys. It reminded me of, like, one of those Saturday afternoon, fights in the 80s. And I'm talking, when it was Boom Boom, or if it was Barry McGuigan, or, it just we had world championship fights. And it was like, I know there were 2 belts back then too, but basically it was like, this is the lightweight championship of the world. Imagine if we had a steady diet, like 18 months of just those 4 guys fighting for the lightweight championship of the world. I think people would lose their minds. We'd be getting, like, ESPN or Fox. We'd be getting like 7 and 8 and 10 million people watching those fights easy. But will that happen?
And if they moved up in weight, they have Terrence Crawford waiting at 147. They have Josh Taylor, Jose Ramirez win in between this. I mean, it's mouth-watering.
Yeah, great fight. And, you point out, like, there are great fighters, and Errol Spence, Spence is really the welterweight champion. He's fighting Danny Garcia. I'm going to call that fight. There are great fighters on the landscape right now. Great fighters. Will they fight each other? And especially coming off of quarantine, everybody's, like, kind of hungry for money and hungry for, like, action on their TV. And, boxing has got to do better and deliver some of these great fights. It's good for everybody. It's good for business. So I know it's hard to do, like, if I was advising one of these fighters, if I was in one of those camps, I would obviously navigate very carefully. But, man, it would be great for them, their money-making, and the sport if just the top guys fought each other. Every time the top guys fight each other, it's fantastic. Like, every time there's a, Sean Porter, Keith Thurman fight, everyone loses their mind. Because at the time, there were top 2 guys. Even like Garcia, Errol Spence, it's like, wow, top guys are fighting each other. This is great. So if that happens more, the whole sport elevates.
I agree, Brian. Brian, we're getting right to the end of the show, so we got to let you go. Man, it was great having you on. I appreciate all the knowledge in baseball and boxing, and hopefully we can get you back on and fix this video thing, because I know the people watching are dying to see what's behind all that knowledge, that face with all that knowledge.
I fixed my hair, too. I'll do it next time as well. No problem.
Thanks a lot, Brian.
See you guys.
Brian, appreciate it. Have a good one, my friend. So there you go, Brian, the great Brian Henny on. I mean, I wish we could have his video on, but man, what a lot of knowledge he has, and a great guest, Jack. Thank you for booking him for the show. I mean,
great person.
Yes, sir. So as the music comes in, Jack, we're going to set you up for the next show, which every Friday we have on Byron Williams, who's our NFL analyst, former Giant and wide receiver, Giant wide receiver and Philadelphia Eagle wide receiver, and has the pulse on the NFL. And we also have coming on Keith Angle, who does the TGI Sports, and he's a Patriots insider, and of course there's a lot more other sports on the show, and he's very a pleasure having him on all the time. So Jack, another great show, and we shall see you all tomorrow for our weekend football preview. And anything else you want to add before we let him go, Jack.
No. I say too much normally. I have nothing.
I'm astonished. The great Jack Hirsch has already said his quota. So thanks again, guys, for coming in. Remember, tomorrow 8.
I had a great time.
Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow. We'll see you tomorrow, folks.